Please turn to the second page of your exam prep on volume packet, and we're going to start with the cone on problem letter C. So it asks us to find the volume of a cone. So this time on your reference sheet, we need to look for the volume formula for a cone. Furthermore, it asks us to round to the nearest tenth. It doesn't specify which form of pi we're going to use, so we're going to assume we need to use the calculator and then round. So first of all, let's notice that we have the radius, which is 3 centimeters, and the height of the cone, which is 5 centimeters. And tipped on its side is a way they kind of try to trick us sometimes because of the orientation. So the radius is always part of the circle, and then the other dimension would be the height. The volume formula is volume equals 1/3 times pi times r squared times height. So it looks like that this part of the formula is what the cylinder was, and 1/3 of it would be a cone. So just like the other formulas, we're going to substitute for the variables. Apparently we're not allowed to use other than pi. We need to use the pi symbol right now. And the radius is 3, and we have to square it. And then the height is 5. Now that we have this substituted, I personally prefer, again, to take this bit by bit. So I'm going to choose to take 3 to the second power, 3 squared, which is 9, and then times 5. Again, I like to work with this bit by bit, so we're going to take volume equals 9 times 5, which is 45. And again, I'm going to move the pi to the back. And on your calculator, if you'll use 1ABC3, which is the way we enter fractions, times 45, we'll get 15 times pi. Finally, if you press the pi key on your calculator, 15 times pi is 47.23898. And we've been asked to round to the nearest tenth. So if we use what dot the, remembering that W is the whole number, dot is the decimal, and T is the tenth, we're going to round the number to the nearest tenth. And we use the number behind the tenth to decide whether we should round the 2 up to 3 or whether we should keep it 2. And the saying goes, based on this number, 5 or more raise the score, 4 or less give it a rest. So we're going to rest at 2. So the volume is approximately, and again I should be using these approximate symbols, 47 2/10. The unit of measure is centimeters cubed. For our next cone, we're asked to find the exact volume, and you're going to notice that they don't give us the radius, they give us the diameter. And since the radius is 1/2 of the diameter, we're going to find 1/2 of 8. So our radius equals 4 inches. We're going to need that. So we're going to start with the volume formula, which is 1/3 times pi r squared h. And we're going to keep the 1/3. We have to keep pi, and the radius is 4 squared, and the height is 9. Right there is the height. 4 squared is 16, so we have 1/3 times 16 times 9, and I'm going to move pi to the back. Again, commutative property allows us to move things around with everything being multiplied. And 1/3 times the product of 16 times 9, which is 144 pi. And that is 1/3 times 144 is 48 times pi. Now here's the wonderful thing about the exact answer is that we're finished. When we're asked to find the exact answer, it means to leave the pi symbol in math. That's the exact way we can answer this question. And again, it's not very comfortable for my brain to look at that, but the volume is 48 times pi, and the unit of measure is inches to the 3rd power. Let's move on to this time the sphere. And the sphere formula is a little bit different. We start out with volume equals 4/3 times pi times r to the 3rd power. You're going to notice there's not a height, but we do have an extra r. In fact, we have used the radius and raise it to the 3rd power. So we're going to substitute. We're given the radius. So we're going to use 4/3 times pi, and we're going to substitute in 3 raised to the 3rd power. So let's go back. Again, we're asked to look at the volume of a sphere, and they want us to round to the nearest hundredth. So it looks like we're going to use our calculator. Once again, when they ask us to round, we want to use our calculator and use the pi key on this. So I'm going to shift around numbers. I'm going to take 3 to the 3rd power, which looks like 9, but it's 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. And I'm going to shift the pi to the end. 4 ABC 3 times 27 would give us 36 pi. And now I want to take 36 times the pi key. And again, I want to use approximation. When I take 36 times the pi key, it's 113.0973355. And since we've been, pardon me, asked to round to the nearest hundredth, I'm going to use what? Here's the whole number, dot, tenth, and hundredth. What dot the heck? And I'm going to chop it off at the 9. This 7 is going to raise the score because it's 5 or more, it raises the score, which means 9 becomes 10. So it creates a domino effect. I'm going to have to move 1 digit over, make this 9 a 10, and keep the rest of the digits. So when we're asked to round to the nearest hundredth, we want to show something in the hundredths column, so I'm going to leave that 0. So the volume is approximately 113 and 10 hundredths. And let's look at the unit of measure. The unit of measure is meters this time. So meters to the 3rd power. Now please turn to the next page. Letter F asks us to find the exact volume of the sphere. So again, we have to start with volume equals 4/3 times pi times radius, to the 3rd power. And if I look over here at the sphere, I notice I'm given a diameter. So the diameter is 18, but the radius is 1/2 of that. So I need 1/2 of 18. 1 ABC 2 times 18, or 18 divided by 2. So the radius equals 9. So filling in the formula, we have 4/3 times pi times 9 raised to the 3rd power. 9 raised to the 3rd power is 750 And I'm just going to shift the pi to the back. 4/3 times 729 is 972. When I multiply these two together, pi. And because we're asked for the exact answer, we get to stop. This is the exact answer because pi is the exact way to say this. And so we want to acknowledge that this is inches to the third power. That would be the answer. Our final problem is a former state problem, a New York exam problem. And they give us a sphere and a cylinder, and both, they say, have a radius of 5 centimeters. The cylinder has a height of 6 centimeters, and they ask us which one has the greatest volume. It asks us to find the volume of each and round the answer to the nearest hundredth, and it gives us one of the formulas. However, it doesn't give us the other formula. So we have to recall that the formula of a cylinder is volume equals pi r squared h. And actually, we don't have to recall. We can look it up on our reference sheet. So we're going to start with the volume formula of a sphere. And you're going to notice they haven't marked the dimensions, but up at the top they did say that the radius of both of them is 5 centimeters. Whoops. So this radius is also 5 centimeters. They also told us the height of this cylinder is 6 centimeters. So even if they don't mark them on the figures themselves, they did give it to us in text. So we'll start with the volume of the sphere. So we have 4/3 times pi times 5 to the third power. So that's 4/3 times pi times 125. When you multiply 4/3 and 125, using the ABC key, you get 166 and 2/3, and then the pi key drops down, our pi symbol, and now we want to use the pi key, taking 166 and 2/3 times pi, which gives us 523.598775.6. So once again, if we look at it, it asks us to round to nearest hundredth. So we're going to use what dot the heck and chop the number off there. This 8 tells this 9 to round to the nearest, or actually this 8 tells it to go up to raise the score. So we have 523 and 60 hundredths. Because we're asked to round, we can now put this rounded version here, and the unit of measure was centimeters to the third power. Now we're going to work on the volume of the cylinder. So the formula is pi r squared h, and in text we were given that the radius is 5, and we square it, and the height is 6. Volume equals pi times 25 times 6. And now if I multiply 25 times 6, we get 150 pi. And again, we need to use the pi key on the calculator. 150 times pi would be 471.238898. Using what dot the heck, we chop the number off after the hundredth, and this 8 tells the 3 to raise the score. So the volume, the approximate volume, and all of these again should be approximations. Once we use Pikey, we have 471 and 24 hundredths. So to answer the question, the volume of a cylinder is 471 and 24 hundredths, and the unit of measure is centimeters cubed. And then finally, the last question is what has the greatest volume, which one of these figures, and the sphere has the greatest volume. During the next session, we will look at problems from past New York exams on volume of cylinders, spheres, and cones.